come to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May we have a roll call, Mr. Gorski?
Nice to see you. How are you?
Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Here.
Mr. Tesler.
Here.
Ms. Antelis.
Here.
Mr. Braverman.
Here.
Mr. Chiarella. Mr. Kaufman.
Here.
Mr. Masters.
Here.
Mr. Poi.
Here.
Mr. Prezioso.
Here.
Mr. Zarneski. Madam Board President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. In accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law, the Monroe Township Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted July 11, 2013, 1 at all schools, 2 Home News Tribune, 3 Cranberry Press, and 4 filed with the clerk of the municipality. Number 5 is the student board members' reports, and since there is no school, we don't have any student board members. We do have a new board member for next year, Corey Hayter, and at the next meeting, we will introduce her publicly to everyone. So at this time, we will go to the anti-bullying school self-assessment grading presentation, and I believe Dr. Gorman is going to handle that.
Yep, I do believe I could do this right from here, and I don't need to get up unless you request. Is that okay? All right, good. So the new anti-bullying laws have been significant over the last 2 years. This year, there is a self-assessment grade that the Department of Education is requiring. As part of that self-assessment and part of the laws, part of the requirement is to share this presentation with the public, to have it posted on the websites within 10 days, and submitted to the Department of Education electronically through New Jersey Homeroom on August 15th. So this is the public presentation to you. It's a quick overview of the core elements of the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights Act. There are 8 core elements ranging from HIB programs, approaches, and other initiatives, training on the Board of Ed approved policy, staff instruction and training programs, curriculum and instruction, personnel, school level, harassment, intimidation, and bullying incident reporting procedures, HIB investigation procedures, and the actual reporting process, and it's all tied to New Jersey statutes. Each school was annually established a program, and they were asked to self-assess their schools. So I meet with the anti-bullying specialists at each building a minimum of twice a year, and we meet to assess the status of the programs in place. Each building was asked to rate themselves on meeting criteria, exceeding requirements, meeting requirements, partially, and doesn't meet. I also asked each anti-bullying specialist with their school team to have a frank conversation with their building administration to share the results and to get feedback from their principals in a face-to-face format, which they all did. An example of one of the questions: the annual establishment of programs, approaches, and other initiatives involve all the following groups. And as you see up there, staff members, administrators, volunteers. That was an example of one of the rubrics to meet, exceed, or not meet. And here are the preliminary results that I shared with the Board of Education through Dr. Hamilton's confidentials, I believe 2 weeks ago, on all of the questions. The results will be, the full piece will be put on school websites and district websites once it meets with Board of Education approval. And again, this is a self-internal assessment. And this is the public reporting process and the review of the grades. The grades are presented at tonight's meeting. Each school must post a grade received on the home page of the school's website. The district must post a grade received by the district and each school in the home page of the district website. Typo on school. The district and schools must post the grades on the websites within 10 days of the New Jersey Department of Education notification that the grades are available. And there is a statement of assurances that Dr. Hamilton has to sign off on the New Jersey Department of Ed homepage. And you could find this in our website, on our homepage, under the Human Resources, and it's listed the entire HIB policies and each school team. Any questions or comments about the reports that we shared with the board, or any public questions about this whole process? This is a first-time process implementation as the extension of the HIB laws and policies in the state of New Jersey.
Okay, seeing none, we will move to the presentation of New Jersey CUSAC, and I will turn this over to Dr. Hamilton.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. As you know, each school is required to go through a thorough review, which is conducted by the State Department of Education. And our scores, we received our scores about a week or so ago, and Monroe did exceptionally well. The NJCUSAC process is really designed to monitor and evaluate school systems, and its primary purpose is to measure and improve school district performance in meeting state standards. And it is also designed to ensure that all districts operate at a high level of performance. In order to meet state standards, you have to score at 80% in each of the 5 areas that the state reviews. If you fall below that 80%, there is a plan that is required to be put in place. If you fall below 50%, then it requires state interventions. In our case, in the 5 areas, our scores are as follows. In the area of instruction and program, we received 93%. In fiscal management, we received 100%. In governance, 100%. In operations, 95%. And in personnel management, 100%. So under instructions and programs, I'm going to ask Jeff to talk about that since that falls under his domain, but let me just share with you what each of these areas look to review and assess. In instruction and program, the indicators are focused on student performance, curriculum, instructional priorities, mandated programs, early childhood, and high school graduation practices. Personnel indicators look very specifically to make sure that every teacher is in a position that he or she holds an appropriate certification, and that all the evaluations are conducted in a timely fashion, and that professional development hours are documented. We implemented a system when I came in the district 4 years ago now called, what's it called, Jeff? My Learning Plan. My Learning Plan, which is a software system that monitors all the professional development throughout the district, and it is essentially provides a transcript for teachers upon review, which the state was very impressed with when they came in to do our audit. Under fiscal management, it focuses on budget planning, financial and budgetary control, the annual audit, which has continued to be exceptional, treatment of restricted resources, and efficiency ratings. Under operations, the indicators look at public school district facilities, how well we maintain our facilities, student conduct, school safety and security, student health, and student support services, particularly those students who may have an IEP or a 504 plan requiring some kind of modification to their educational program to make sure that we are compliant with state and federal guidelines. And finally, under the area of governance, the indicators focus on district board policies promoting student achievement, district board training, disclosures and operations, compliance with ethics, and board policies. And I'm very proud to report that we are one of the few districts who have managed in the last 3 years to completely go through our policy manual. We receive compliments from the state about how that is so rare that we have been able to maintain the level of consistency with reviewing and updating our policies in the manner that we have. So Jeff, I'm going to ask you to talk a few minutes about instruction and program and where we are and why we're there.
And the operations piece.
And the operations, yes. Those are the 2 areas that we receive less than 100%. And let me have the mic back.
Go ahead.
And the intent is not to highlight those areas in a negative light at all, because in comparison, even at 93 and 95%, we were exceptional. In fact, we rated ourselves lower in one of these 2 areas than the state did. They came in and said, you're actually doing better than you think you are. But where there's an opportunity for improvement, we want to talk about what those opportunities are.
Actually, to continue what Dr. Hamilton said, 80%, if you reach 80% on those 5 indicators, you're deemed highly efficient by the state. So our numbers were much higher than that in all areas. As far as the curriculum and the instruction and curriculum program, I'll read you the response on where we were at. Initially, we assessed ourselves at a 91%. The county came in, and when they provide us with certain results that we can't assess ourselves on, it comes from state reports. So the first one was, at the time we completed the self-assessment, the score was 91% for instruction and program. We verified scores and updated indicator 7, that's the graduation rate specifically. Specifically, at the time we completed the self-assessment in November 2012, we used the 2011 graduation rate, which was 83.5%. That was the most up-to-date data anyone had at that point. Since that time, the New Jersey Department of Education updated the adjusted cohort graduation rate, and the graduation rate data from Monroe for 2012 was 94.09%. And then this resulted in an increase in the 2 points for instruction and program, and that's what you had referenced in your question to me, Mr. Poi. As far as the other piece, you need to look at the indicators that we did not score the maximum of. Indicator 3, the district would need to have at least 95% of the student population achieve proficiency in the most recent year assessed for language arts literacy. Monroe achieved between a 75% and 85% rating, and that just generates a score. Indicator 4 would have to be over at least 95% again of all students achieving proficiency for mathematics, and Monroe achieved at least 85 to 94.9%. And lastly, indicator 7, the district would need to have an adjusted cohort graduation rate of at least 95% to obtain the maximum grade of 4 points. Monroe scored 3 points for having 94.09% an adjusted cohort grad weight. So those were the indicators for the 7 points not reaching 100% in curriculum and instruction, which again is very positive. There was one other mark-off in the whole CUSAC process, and that was under operations that hit a 95%, and there are 20 indicators in operations. The one piece that fell short, and it was a self-assessment, was the submission of all required NJ Smart files by the due dates and has an error rate of less than 2% of each file. So there was a piece where we had pre-identification labels for NJS testing, and at the time, Reggie had told me that there was a 0 errors, but then the state came back and they used a different date, and they came up with an error on the pre-ID labels. So he has shared with me that the process of the DOE and NJ Smart with the submission of data has generated some errors that are way beyond our control, and the only thing that we just weren't under the 2% for each file. And that is the only piece under the 20 indicators in operations that we self-assessed ourselves and said, yeah, it's higher than 2%, but it is, we believe it's for conditions that are beyond our control with the DOE.
So long story short, Monroe did very well. Our audit took a course of 3 different visits from the state, where they usually coordinate them in one day, and these 3 different teams come in. For some reason, our teams, these different areas were reviewed independent of one another, which is good and bad, I guess. But ultimately, we did very well, and I want to commend the staff for all their help in responding to my sometimes neurotic behavior about dates and times and documents, and this is why it's so important.
Any questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, we will go to the approval of minutes for the Public Board of Education meeting of May 8th, 2013. A motion and a second.
So moved.
Mr. Tesler?
Second.
Mr. Masters? Any comments or corrections? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions?
I have to abstain on May 8th.
Mr. Poi? The closed session meeting of May 8th, 2013.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Tesler, Mr. Masters, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Mr. Poi.
Barb?
The Special Public Board of Education meeting of May 22nd, 2013.
So moved.
Mr. Tesler? Is there a second?
Second.
By Mr. Masters. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
We don't want to approve our minutes tonight. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ms. Antelis. The special, where are we? This closed session meeting of May 22nd, 2013.
So moved.
Mr. Tesler?
Said let there be light.
Second.
Mr. Masters, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ms. Antelis, are you abstaining on that one?
I'm sorry, abstain. I'm trying to get back in.
Oh, sorry.
The computer guy.
The Public Board of Education meeting of June 5th, 2013.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Tesler, Mr. Masters, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? None? Okay, the closed session meeting of June 5th, 2013.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Tesler, Mr. Masters, I don't even have to look. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The Public Board of Education meeting of June 19th, 2013.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Tesler, Mr. Masters, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Ms. Antelis? And lastly, the closed session meeting of June 19, 2013.
So moved.
Mr. Tesler,
Second.
Mr. Masters, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Ms. Antelis. Okay, we will go to number 9 on the agenda, committee reports. Are there any committees that need to report this evening? Mr. Kaufman.
We had a curriculum meeting this evening, and very briefly, we went over a few things. We approved the internet marketing curriculum, which is an updated curriculum for next year. We adopted a few new textbooks. We approved a new AP economics book for next year. And just so everybody's clear, the new textbooks that we approved tonight for the AP economics included both a hardcover and an electronic copy of the textbook. At this time, this is the only way the publisher gives us this particular book. And as it's a new course, we do need to provide a book for the course because it's brand new. So for this batch that we're buying for this course, we get both the 6-year license for the hardcover version, as well as 6 yearly updates of the electronic versions, which will be deployed on the iPads. In addition to that, we looked at 2 other books for the biology, keep me honest, Jeff, for the biology group. One was for the regular bio, which was about 800 copies, as well as the honors biology for about 100 and something.
150, and it was 2 years to verify what we talked about.
Okay, so 150 copies for a 2-year site license, correct? And those are electronic copies only. There won't be no hardcovers for those. And where we can, we are, of course, looking to, and where it's economically feasible also, to make sure that wherever we can, we're using electronic ebook versions or iBook versions or whatever the appropriate flavor of technology is for that particular course. We also went over a drug and alcohol survey, and it was determined that we're going to wait for the Middlesex County survey, which is going to be maybe next year instead of having to do our own, as well as looking at some preliminary AP results for social studies and science test results. So I think that pretty much covers the things we looked at today.
Thank you. Anyone else have, Ms. Antelis?
We had a Finance Committee meeting on June 11th. Mr. Gorski presented a change in the state budget to make districts whole that may have suffered a net decrease in state aid. for the 13-14 school year. And Mr. Gorski stated that this could be an additional $57,546 within the capital outlay budget, which has restricted use. Mr. Gorski presented an update from the state, whereas the reimbursement threshold remains unchanged by the legislator at $40,000 for in-district and $55,000 for private placements. Can you explain that a little bit, Mr. Gorski?
Sure. That's under the state aid category called extraordinary aid. And as Ms. Antelis mentioned, the state had considered changing the thresholds, which would have affected the award, but left them consistent with last year. Reimbursing district for special education costs per pupil in excess of $40,000 for in-district students and $55,000 for out-of-district students. And that does go through a formula. It's not a dollar per dollar reimbursement. And the award that Monroe is to receive is $330,263 for 13-14, slightly higher than what we had in the budget, partially because our budget was based on conservatism, and we had more students who qualified due to IEPs.
Thank you. And last, Mr. Gorski gave an update that the fixed asset appraisal will commence throughout the district on Monday, July 15th. This process will inventory and appraise all district assets valued at $500 and higher and $2,000 and higher for insurance and accounting purposes. The next meeting is on August 15th, on Thursday at 6 p.m. at the board office.
Okay, Mr. Tesler?
Thank you. Yes, we had a personnel meeting, and the one thing I want to bring to your attention to is that you got your personnel meeting notes last Friday in the confidential. The one thing we're approving tonight is a job description for the accounting supervisor. We had a retirement in the bookkeeper position over at the business office, and Mr. Gorski restructured that position, got rid of the bookkeeper position, changed it to an accounting supervisor, changed around the responsibilities, got rid of a stipend, incorporated in the job description. And actually, there's more responsibilities, but actually the starting salary is going to be, I think, approximately around $10,000 less than the old position. So this gave us an opportunity to restructure the position to meet our needs now moving forward and save us money as well and get rid of a stipend because we don't like stipends, right? No, just kidding. So we just wanted to bring that to your attention, and it's on the approval for tonight in the, I think, the superintendent's report.
Mr. Masters, you always come after Mr. Tesler.
Yes.
Tonight.
I was waiting for him to read something real lengthy and onerous.
I'll read the job description if you want.
I'm waiting for it. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities. We had a Buildings and Grounds meeting last night, and very, very good Buildings and Grounds meeting. I'll read it out of order from the agenda for people that were there. You might be a little confused. The state has a ROD grant project that they're starting for capital projects. If you apply and your project is accepted, they'll pay for 40% of the cost of the project. So we are submitting the middle school's roof work, if you remember from some of the previous meetings. We're also going to look into paving some of the throughput in front of the school where there's some potholes and some dangerous areas, and the tennis courts, refacing the tennis courts over there, all under the ROD grants. We've also looked into applying for a ROD grant for the front of the 73 wing, the front of the school, the windows, and some of the painting and the edging to see if we can get that included. The middle school's classroom expansion update's coming along well. We're probably going to look at a net of 9 total new rooms in that building when it's complete. We okayed a platform lift for the high school because it do some maintenance work and some safety issues. The access swipe card expansion project's coming along on schedule and under budget. Oak Tree is completely complete. The director of security recommended a couple of changes and a couple of extra doors, so we're going to look into putting those in. And in the high school here, the auditorium, we're looking into removing some of the handicap platforms at the back because there's been some issues with them. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have a report? Okay, seeing none, we will go to the public forum. Anyone from the public wishing to speak to the agenda, please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, I'm Stephen Ryback, 23 Riviera Drive. Number one, congratulations on the CUSAC scores. It's always nice to be able to say and hear good things. I have two questions, really. One is on page 10, item 4. I noticed that we're looking to hire someone to complete evals, CST evals, and I was curious as to why that's being done, especially the rate of $365 per eval.
It's not unusual, Madam Board President.
Oh, sure.
It's not unusual for us, particularly during the summer and evaluations that may have been received late. And these evaluations have to be completed within a certain amount of time according to federal and state regulations. So we often have consultants come in who specialize in certain areas based on the needs of those students who have been identified as needing certain assessments.
Thanks for clearing that up. And the last one, at a prior meeting, we talked about home instruction, and I noticed there was, I think, 32 students receiving home instruction. I was curious if you were thinking or considering using, as per my suggestion, retired Monroe teachers as opposed to contracting out to a private source.
We actually are looking at that. I'll be meeting with the Director of Pupil Personnel Services tomorrow, in fact, and that's one of the items on our agenda, how to restructure home instruction in general, and even looking at some ways we may be able to do that by maximizing technology as well.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Robert Roach, 18 Muirfield Boulevard. Page 18, F1, regarding Ann Holmes. Would you please explain a little more about what she does and for those duties?
Sure. You want to take this one?
Our special ed director works closely with our board attorney in a lot of parent requests for special education services, generally outside of the district. And our board attorney recommended the services of Ann Holmes, who has specialized credentials in reviewing out-of-district programs. She'll actually go and visit a school and review their program to find out if it is equivalent to what we're offering, or if the student's IEP demands are such that that out-of-district placement is really warranted. And that helps the district better serve the students by matching their needs exactly with the program in an efficient manner.
So it deals with the special education children?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me how much you have budgeted for her duties for the year?
There's nothing specific for Ms. Holmes in the budget, as this is a new placement, but this would probably come out of the general legal account, where there is monies appropriated for the use of specialists in different areas.
I wonder if you have anybody in-house that could do those same types of duties?
I don't believe so. I don't believe so, and that's why we're retaining. Plus, there's a benefit to an outside person making these assessments as opposed to an in-house person who could be perceived to have a bias to the in-house programs.
Just to piggyback a little bit on what Mr. Ryback just said, with the using teachers, for retired teachers, I guess, for the home study, I assume, we're paying the teachers, I presume, to go do the home, people who are out sick or for whatever reasons. I know when my grandchildren in East Brunswick, one of them was injured in an automobile accident. She had home study, but my daughter had to pay for the teacher who was coming in to tutor for the period of time she's out. And I was just wondering whether you've given any consideration to the parent being responsible for that, or whether you legally have to provide for it.
Tutoring is different. If a parent chooses, if a student needs tutorial services, then yes. If they don't come after school, then the parent is responsible for that. But when a youngster is unable to attend school, we do have a legal obligation to supplant their instruction. And if that is by way of a medical excuse, that they are educated at home or in some other facilities, that is our responsibility to do so.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else from the public?
Good evening, Tom Notestein, 15 Nathaniel Street. My congratulations also on the CUSAC. It was very impressive. I just had some questions with regard to that. I know, Dr. Hamilton, you mentioned that there were comparisons to other schools in that, and that we rated very well. Is that accurate? Is that across all DFG, or is that just in our DFG?
Well, actually, I haven't seen the report, so this is just an oral conversation that was exchanged, and I was specifically interested in Middlesex County.
Okay, so that's, when you said comparisons, it was basically based on Middlesex.
Correct.
Also, with regard to item H on page 16, the superintendent's salary, is that keeping with the guidelines established currently by Governor Christie with regards to our salary versus the size of the district?
Yes, it is, because this was grandfathered in before the law came out. So the contract that Dr. Hamilton has been approved by the board before the new law from the governor.
So this is actually higher than the new law.
Yes, it is.
I don't like the sound of that. Why are we doing that? If we're basically, we don't have a choice, is what you're saying?
You want to take that?
Working with the county on contracts, I have specific knowledge on Dr. Hamilton's matter. And when the law went into place, anybody who had an existing contract, which is customary with just about all new laws coming from the state, was allowed to enjoy the term of that contract before they were subject to the provisions of the cap. Dr. Hamilton's contract extends further than the 13-14 school year, so he would not be subject to the conditions of the cap until his current contract expires. And that expires June 30 of 15.
At which time then he will be subject to the cap?
Yes, sir.
So that could be a reduction based on, I guess I'm getting at, what is the cap for our district?
With a high school, I believe it's 175,000.
So theoretically, in 2015, he's going to roughly go down to the cap.
Theoretically, yes.
Theoretically. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Okay, seeing none, we will go to the superintendent's report. Dr. Hamilton?
Yes. Here we are. Okay, enrollment data is listed in the agenda for you. Again, I consistently call your attention to 166 additional students when comparing last year June's report to June 30, 13 report. We anticipate that trend will continue, and we have plans in place, or we're beginning to develop plans through the demographic study that's currently underway to respond to those kinds of increases that we are anticipating. The enrollment for out-of-district placement and homebound instruction is included, along with the safety and security drills. Obviously, the next board report will not have this information. Since it reports the month prior to, there won't be such data for the July report. Moving on to the personnel report, Madam Board President and members of the Board of Education. It is recommended by the superintendent that personnel items A through DD be approved by roll call vote.
So moved.
Mr. Braverman?
Second.
Second by Mr. Masters. Any comments or questions by members of the board? Mr. Poi?
There's a couple of items that I would just like some clarification on. Item K, which on my agenda is on page 8, talks about PEG Channel TV Studio summer staff. If you could elaborate on what that's all about.
Sure. The PEG channel is the Public Educational and Governmental Access Channel. There are two people who historically have been assigned, at least since we've had the PEG channel, to work in the summer, and their responsibilities include obviously taping and placing the board meetings on the channel, producing Champions of Education episodes. They also produce the television schedule for the year. They upload the footage and change the programs. This has been in place for at least the last 3 years since we had the channel. And there are two people who are assigned to do it, one of which is here tonight.
Okay, thank you. Item M on that same page, we are being asked to approve nurses for afternoon time for the summer band camp. Now, my understanding was that the tuition or pay, whatever the charge is, that the parents would be paying for their children to participate in this, that it would cover the cost. Does that also cover the cost of the nurses?
That is correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. And item N, it speaks of, I know what the senior option is, but I was curious as to what is necessary for 25 hours of work this summer in terms of the summer pre-scheduling and development. What is that all about?
The folks who are assigned those tasks are specifically going to be working with the recruitment and placement of over 70 special ed students who will be working in some kind of partnership, workforce-ready partnership. And they will also be approving contracts for potential employers throughout the summer and making sure that students are placed. So as they begin the option in September, these placements will already be in place.
And is that for special ed students only?
Not exclusively, no.
I'm sorry?
Not exclusively. Some of them are gen ed students.
Oh, okay, all right. And also item P on the following page, we're approving a list of high school department coordinators. And I did not see anyone listed for math. Is that because we're going to be dealing with that next month, or?
That is correct. As you know, the current or previous math coordinator was approved as the math supervisor, so that now created a recent vacancy that we will be working to fill over the summer.
Anyone else have questions or comments? Mr. Prezioso?
Yes, page 9, item O. Could you explain the Falcon Nest preschool pre-scheduling program?
I'm sorry, what page is that? Page 9, you said?
Page 9.
Oh,
O.
on the top, the Falcons Nest Preschool.
Yes, the folks who will be working in the Falcons Nest preschool program will be identifying students who are going to be placed in the developmental program at the high school and developing appropriate programs to them. And this is going to be at their supplemental instructional rate as per the negotiated agreement.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll have a roll call. Mr. Gorski?
Ms. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Poi?
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso? Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz?
Yes.
Madam Board President, personnel items A through double D passes.
Thank you.
And moving on to board action items on the superintendent's report, Madam Board President and members of the Board of Education, it is recommended by the superintendent that board action items A through P be approved by roll call vote.
So moved.
Mr.
Second.
Masters, Mr. Tesler. Any comments or questions for the Dr. Hamilton? Okay, seeing none, we'll have a roll call.
Ms. Antelis?
Yes, and recuse myself on item H.
So noted. Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes to all, recuse on H.
Recuse on H. Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Poi?
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso?
Yes.
Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz?
Yes.
Madam Board President, board action items A through P passes.
Thank you.
That concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. At this time, we'll go to the business administrator's report. Mr. Gorski?
Madam Board President and members of the Monroe Township Board of Education, it is recommended that board action items A through F be approved by consent roll call.
So moved.
Mr. Braverman?
Second.
Mr. Masters? Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Gorski? Mr. Prezioso?
Page 17, C. Substance abuse tests and all of these other tests, they're given at random or if they're requested?
Yeah. National Safety Compliance serves the Transportation Department as required by law, and there is random drug testing for drivers.
Random, okay.
And also, if there's a suspicion of a driver being impaired, they could also be subject to be required to take the tests.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll have a roll call.
Ms. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Poi?
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso?
Yes.
Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz?
Yes.
Madam Board President, board action items A through F passes.
Thank you.
And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay. Board President's report is going to be very short. I've spent the last three and a half weeks in Florida and been reading a lot of information on education down in Florida. They have a county system down in Florida as opposed to each city. And one of the problems that they're incurring is the same as we're doing in Monroe, with an influx of student population and not enough money coming from the state to support the new students that are coming into their districts. So they're having a hard time with their budgets. They also have a mandated iPad one-on-one initiative. I think it was mandated 2 years ago that by 2014, every student in Florida will have an iPad, and they're also having a major problem down there with trying to support a new initiative, state mandated, without the funding. So we're not alone in this area. It seems to be something that a lot of people are having a problem with. We'll go to number 14, the other Board of Education business. Is there anything from any member of the Board of Education? Mr. Prezioso?
Yes, hi. Getting back to home instruction, the suspension part, we're paying for those teachers, correct?
Yes.
Is that the law, or it's just the health issues or the special needs children that we should be paying for? If a child is suspended for any particular reason, we incur that cost?
Yes. The suspension removes a child from the school as a disciplinary or safety issue. It does not preclude them from their eligibility for a free public education.
It's mandated then that we should do that.
That is correct.
Also, there was a curriculum meeting tonight, and again, I was not called. This is maybe the fourth time that, as an alternate, I wasn't called to attend the meeting. So maybe we'd have a better system in finding out if the people are going to show up or not. I'd like to attend if I'm the alternate.
Yeah, I did make an announcement at the last meeting that if somebody couldn't attend a meeting, to please either call the alternate or Mr. Gorski's office, and we would have them call the alternate.
And you know what? I should probably take responsibility for that, because I received the call about 5:30 today, and Mr. Zernansky wasn't going to attend, so I should have called you. My apologies.
Okay. And at the last finance meeting, I requested, and so did another board member, for a monthly update on MECA and the enrichment program, but it was not on the agenda. Could we keep that every month, please?
Yes, we'll have, it was not on, do we have an update on MECA?
In the Finance Committee meeting, we went over the updated numbers for MECA, for enrollment, and those were as follows. The MECA initiative has now 29 enrolled students, and the early kindergarten program has 37. And that's been on a steady increase as we've been reporting over the last few months. The last financial update that we gave was through May 31st, and we are currently updating all funds in the district, including this new proprietary fund, for June 30th, and we'll have that completed shortly.
Okay, thank you. And is that it? Okay. Anyone else have any comments or other board business? Mr. Hoy?
Yes, I want to talk about a report that I sent to all the members of the board by email, and I did ask that you not reply to all, since it would violate the sunshine laws. I developed this report using information that's available on the New Jersey Department of Education's website, and I've done similar reports for the board prior to my being elected to the board at the beginning of this year. I did a report to the board as part of the public session in 2010, 2011, 2012, and shared my findings, as well as gave copies of those reports to the members of the board. I remain concerned with the cost per pupil in most of the categories that the Department of Education uses. For the past 3 years, we have ranked the third highest in total budgetary cost per pupil in the county. Only New Brunswick and Perth Amboy spend more per pupil than we do. And it's a well-known fact how much state aid New Brunswick and Perth Amboy get and how little we get. Our per pupil cost for classroom instruction, which is one of the categories, is higher than most districts in the county. And we spend more than any other district in the county for supplies and textbooks. But interestingly enough, when it comes to classroom salaries and benefits, our per pupil cost place Monroe not at the top, but in the middle of the 12 districts that I included in this report. The total administrative cost here in Monroe has consistently been the third highest on a per pupil basis in the county. And until this past year, we were spending the most per pupil on extracurricular cost. This past year, we came in second because we were surpassed by a few dollars per student by South Plainfield. In almost every category, Monroe is spending more per pupil than the other districts of Middlesex County. I'm uncomfortable with allowing our expenditures to increase without having explanations as to why we spend more than almost all other districts in the county. We need to see what can be done to be better stewards of the taxpayers' money. I hereby move that this board direct our administration to engage in a study to determine why other districts in the county spend less than Monroe. This study should produce specific explanations in the various categories that clearly explain why our expenditures exceed those of other districts. And I'm asking my fellow board members to support this motion.
I second.
Are there any-
Questions?
Yes, I was just going to comments or questions by members of the
And who
board.
do you propose should do this study? Who do you propose to do this?
The administration, the central administration.
And what exactly, like, are you looking for? Isn't this something that around budget time we should be discussing?
Well, for the past 3 years, I presented this board with this information, and it appears that it's been ignored because I have heard no evidence at any of the board meetings nor read anything that they have taken those things into account. And yes, I absolutely feel that it should be part of the budget formulation, and that is why I am raising the issue tonight, because it will take them time to see why it is that Monroe is spending more per pupil on extracurricular activities than any other district in the county. Why are we spending more on textbooks than any other district in the county? Why is it that our administrative costs are the third highest in the county? They can't produce those answers right off the cuff. They're going to have to see what these other districts are doing that allow them to do it, in many cases, several $100s less per student than we are spending. So yes, I think it's timely because it's going to take some time for them to do that. And I do know that budget formulation usually begins as early as September or October.
If I can comment.
Sure.
If I can make a suggestion, Mr. Poi and members of the Board of Education, what you describe as a pretty lofty undertaking. And as we anticipate our board retreat this summer, where we'll be looking at goals for 2013, 2014, that may be an arena to flush out exactly what you seek. But I think it's not feasible for us to be able to provide an explanation about the spending in other districts. And I don't even know how we would access that information, frankly. But if the desire of the board through that goal setting process is to establish a goal that would look specifically at a plan to reduce in certain areas or to identify what those expenditures are that may explain those, I think that may be a better use of our time. But to do that kind of study, frankly, would probably consume so much of our time that there would be little time for anything else.
Anyone else?
I appreciate that comment. And when I say I appreciate it, it's because I do understand that it is not an easy undertaking. But I would suggest that it be considered, for the example, in the area of extracurricular, we have someone here in the district that is paid who is in charge of our extracurricular activities. I would think that and I don't know if he's a 12-month employee or not, yes. But I would think that part of his duties could be that he start making some phone calls and finding out how many sports do these various schools have, how many coaches and assistant coaches do they have, how often do they replace the uniforms and equipment, all those various costs, how many clubs do they have, get a copy of their stipends. I mean, that's an easy thing that could be emailed or sent through the mail. That's just one example. In terms of the operation of the plant, yes, we did expand the district with the addition of the new high school, with the opening of the Applegard School. But even prior to that, we were running very, very high in terms of our plant operation and maintenance, very high compared to other districts. I think we just need to dig in to find out why are we spending so much more than other districts in the county. So whatever we can do to do that, I think it's time that we did it. We can't continue to just build the budget the way we've built it in the past, because that doesn't seem to be changing how much we're spending on a per pupil basis. And I want the public to understand that when we say a per pupil basis, even though Monroe is getting larger, which does increase the expenditures, because it's on a per pupil basis, then that takes into the account that we are increasing the number of students. So I'm amenable to any effort, any change in this, in terms of how we go about doing it, just so long as it's done, and at least by this time next year, we have a pretty concrete idea of where we could probably make some major reductions. I know that it takes time to do this, and it takes time to build a budget. And I know it's not going to happen overnight, but I do believe we need to bite the bullet. We need to take a look at this information that's available from the New Jersey Department of Education. I think that's why it's there. It's available to the public, and that's why I was looking at it 3 years ago. So I'm very amenable to a change, but I want to maintain some kind of a motion tonight, and I do want a vote on this motion that we undertake a study in terms of these various categories to see if we can ascertain, get a better understanding of why it is that we are spending more money than most other districts, and how we might go about reducing expenditures wherever possible. I am not looking to reduce the quality of our program. I am not looking to reduce the opportunity for students to participate in extracurricular. I am looking to see why it is that we always seem to come out so high in the expenditures per pupil.
Ms. Prezioso, did you have a comment? Mr. Kaufman?
Yeah, I think the concept here is valid, and I think what we want to try and do is, because I know to answer one of your questions, we have repeated and reported through various board meetings since the litany of time some of the anomalies that exist in Monroe Township that do cause us to fall above. And I think where Doug is going, and correct me if I'm wrong, is if, for example, we take a look at transportation for Middlesex County, right? And we know for a fact that, you know, Monroe happens to be extremely large, and virtually 100% of our students are transported because of lack of sidewalks and lack of whatever in big distances. That in the area of transportation, Monroe is going to come out high because of these mitigating factors. This is why, for the transportation piece of the budget, why Monroe sits up here. If it comes into the category of maybe, I don't know, special education, because it's cost per pupil factor, right? And Monroe is disproportionately high in the number of special education kids that we have here versus a counterpart in another county or another district within the county. This is another reason why we are coming up at a little bit higher. And when you start adding these factors in, this is what kind of describes and defines why Monroe may be coming up a bit higher than some of the other districts within Middlesex County. And I think ultimately that's what we want to try and get to Doug's point. Not we're saying, all right, start cut, but further definitively explain why these things exist and why the public would want to know, okay, Monroe is higher cost per pupil because of boom, 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 which other districts don't have as much cost or comparable for whatever reason. Am I on target?
I believe I understand you, Ken, and I don't object to anything you're saying, except what I do object to is our using soft information to support some of the statements or some of our cost. I think we need hard evidence as to why that is. For example, transportation is not even included in one of the categories here, okay? It's not even included, even though what you said, much of that is true, although I would imagine that we can find in some of the other districts in the township that they face some of the same obstacles we face in terms of they have to transport a high percentage of their students. But it would be good to actually know that, even though that's not part of these particular categories that they use here. But in terms of special ed, that is part of it. And it's relatively easy to go to the state's website and see what percent of the student body in each district is classified as special ed. I know when it comes to the state aid allocation and their formulas, they give every district the same percentage. They don't allow it to vary. I think it's 14.9 or it's 16.9, but they use the same figure in their formulas for the state aid calculation. So I'm just simply saying that let's see if we can't construct the data that supports those expenditures or that explains those expenditures, as opposed to simply what we think is the case, what we think the explanation is.
Anyone else? Ms. Antelis?
Yeah. And I understand where you're going with this. I share your concern. My concern is that you don't have a plan. How many districts do they look at? Do they look at all the FG districts? Do they look at I districts? Do they look at just Middlesex County? Do they look at districts comparable to us? We need a plan. We can't really just throw that at them and say, hey, go find out why we're spending this money. So I think that what we need to do as board as a whole is get together and do goal setting, and that be one of the goals that we have. Find out, look through your paperwork and say, why are we spending more? Some of these are only a matter of dollars. I don't see...
Some are a matter of a couple of $100s.
And I understand that, so I think that we'd be better off with, as a board as a whole, coming up with a plan that sort of directs the administration to where we want them to go, not just a motion of go out and look for this. So well, I'm going to ask that we table that motion till we have the whole board together. We can set a date for a retreat and start making these goals.
Well, the other problem is too that there's so many categories that you would want to look at that I don't think our administration could do that and do their jobs well. That if we broke it down to this category this year and that category next year, yes, and use it as part of our school goals, because we're already, as one of our school goals from last year, looking at clubs and sports and extracurricular.
And we still don't have the results.
No, we don't.
We still don't have the results, and I think that is a shame. But in terms of a plan, the districts that are included in this study are the districts that are listed here. You don't have to go out and create a new list. Okay, there are the districts of Middlesex County that have large high schools like we do. Some are more affluent, some are less affluent. But the data is all in terms of per pupil spending. That's what puts the equality in all of those districts. How much are you spending per pupil? I'm amenable to, let's reduce the number of categories, but let's don't just do one category per year, or my God, we'll be here 12 years trying to get this thing done. I mean, that is unconscionable in terms of the taxes that we are paying in Monroe. We have to start looking at this. We can't simply say it's business as usual, as has been happening the past 3 or 4 years.
If I, Madam Board President, if I may, I just want to comment on the goal. We don't have a plan for the goal because the goal was for this year to look specifically at technology. When those goals were set last August as a matter of fact, the board recognized that we would not get through assessing every effort and initiative in the district in 1 year. So we were to look, our direction was to look specifically at technology, which is what we were doing, which is what we have done. So I just don't want it to be on record that we don't have a plan has been finished.
Mr. Braverman, did you have a question?
I'd like to second Amy's motion.
To table this until the...
It can't be, right. There's a motion already.
I made a motion to table.
Yeah, well, the motion to table would come.
Discussion should have been stopped at that point.
Okay, so...
You need to go back to Doug's motion in his second.
Before we table it?
Well, we don't know if he had support for the motion.
I second.
What's the question? I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. So the motion to table precedes the motion that you made. So is there any discussion on the motion to table? If not, then.
I'm just making the motion until the whole board is here that we can discuss goal setting and then look at these items and include it in our goals.
Okay, and it was seconded by
So I
Mr.
would-
Braverman.
I seconded that, but what she's saying is she didn't put a timeline on this. She put a condition on the motion, which I'm seconding.
Okay, so is there any comments or questions on the motion to table? If not, we'll have a roll call.
Ms. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
No.
Mr. Poi?
No.
Mr. Prezioso?
No.
Mr. Tesler?
No.
Ms. Konowich?
Yes. And you forgot Kaufman.
Mr. Kaufman?
Only yes, yes. Mhm.
Oh,
That's 4 yes, so the motion to table does
Does
not
not.
pass.
okay, so then we'll go back to Doug's motion to
Wait a minute.
Yeah, I think a tie
four.
loses.
It was 4-4.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Poi?
I'm not certain of the parliamentary procedure, but I am willing to modify that motion. And that would be that we devote a major part of this retreat in discussing how we can go about looking at these categories and looking to see how we can determine what the data is so that we can start looking to see how we can reduce some of these per pupil costs.
So your motion would be to?
The motion would be
You
that
want to
at the
amend.
retreat.
You want to amend your motion to have this discussion at the next board retreat.
At the next board retreat, and that a major goal of that meeting would be to to set about a plan with a timeline as to how we're going to arrive at knowing how Monroe is spending so much more than other districts in these various categories.
Okay, is there a second to the amendment to Mr. Poi's motion? Mr. Prezioso. Is there any comments or questions?
Mr.
Braverman?
I think I understand what you're saying. My problem is, each time a motion comes up for extracurricular activities, for example, I don't hear anybody questioning it. It's just passed. When the contract came up for the teachers, which we comply with because that's the honorable thing to do, if I was asking the questions that you're asking, the first thing I would do is compare our contracts with the other school districts. Maybe that's where it is, but in looking over your notes, and I think these came from the same place, Monroe's pupil per course compared with other districts, etc. The dollars in most of the categories were less, we're spending fewer than the average for the areas. For example, the state average for classroom salaries and benefits is $8,097. But Monroe is $7,525.
And Marv, not to cut you off, but that's the only category where we fall so low.
Wait a minute.
And that's probably because
I just happened to
of the
look at
salary
that.
guide.
This was not pre-planned.
Okay, can we just have one board member at a
This
time?
wasn't pre-planned. Hold on. The state average for classroom instruction per pupil is 85.88. And ours is 82.23. So that's two categories.
I think I'm going to ask Mr. Gorski to respond to this question.
Schools in the county.
Mr. Foy?
I'm sorry?
Look at the schools in the county on that category. We may be less than the state average, but look at the schools in the county.
Well, the extracurricular costs per pupil, yeah, were $6 higher than the state mean.
I'm going to ask
$6.
Mr. Gorski to respond.
Thank you, Madam Board President. I certainly very much appreciate Mr. Poy's interest in the taxpayer guide to educational spending. As we've discussed at previous budget meetings back in January and February, Dr. Hamilton and I are required each January to attend a budget efficiency meeting at the county office where this taxpayer guide to educational spending, which Mr. Poy is extracting these metrics from, is used primarily to review the efficiencies in our budget. And we go through each category and we discuss the specific placement for Monroe. And ultimately, the county this year, again, was satisfied with the efficiency of our budget and allowed us to proceed. That's not always the case. He quite often asks for revisions, certain items to get pulled out of different categories within the budget and modifications to be made. We've never had to make one. I don't mean to temper the presentation by Mr. Poy at all, because I think there's certainly merit by going through these metrics, and any efficiencies that we can make are certainly noteworthy. But 9 of the 15 categories, Monroe was below the state median or average. And that includes a lot of districts within that category that receive a lot of external funding sources, such as state aid, that Monroe does not have, so their numbers consequently would be higher. So certainly there's metrics here where Monroe is 1, 2, or 3 in the county that deserve explanation. Certain categories are so small that one simple district initiative could place a district moving from the bottom all the way to the top in 1 year. And there has been metrics like other purchase services for instruction where Monroe has dropped from first to third. And other categories like plant operation and maintenance, we were very efficient, being 8 and 11, where once we opened the new high school in 11 and 12, we jumped to number 3 and number 2. So again, in conclusion, there is merit to reviewing all of the indicators that Mr. Poy brings up. However, this may not be as dire, and there certainly is plausible explanation when you consider the state median and average and Monroe's placement within those, and certain external categories like Mr. Kaufman brought up that are outside of Monroe's control.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment, Mr. Masters?
The amendment is to move discussion to the retreat.
Right.
Could we,
As part of the goal setting.
because it is very large, but I like the theory of it. Could we maybe carve out 2 of the categories, or
Well,
a subset of the
That, I
categories?
think, would be part
And
of the
concentrate
discussion.
on them? No, I'm saying so we have the information ahead of time, concentrate on that at the retreat. Because there's a couple on there I looked at, and I said, yeah, I wonder why it's so high.
Yeah.
But it might be something extremely simple. And a couple of these, at least in my opinion now, are low-hanging fruit. They seem more obvious than trying to dig into some really crazy stipends or budgets about other districts. But, for example, the extracurricular cost per pupil might be something, and, hold on a second. I would you stop counting? You're throwing me off.
Sorry.
And maybe the classroom supplies and textbooks. I think that was a great one, just to dig in, if only as an exercise in how we're doing things and maybe to uncover it. I agree with you, but I do think this would be crazy to open up every one of these categories and start pulling through them.
Okay.
But I do agree, if we're going to do it at the retreat, which is in when?
We're going to set a date after.
I don't know if we should do, or try to, because I think if you try to grasp every category, we're going to accomplish nothing.
And I'm willing to acknowledge that. That's the reason I was willing to change the motion that I had made.
So, go ahead, Ms. Antelis.
Which is why we need to get together with a retreat that the whole board can discuss which areas we want to concentrate on.
Well, the necessity of having the whole board, I mean, that's why you have a quorum. We have a quorum here tonight, and that's the very reason for that. I don't think that to have the whole board is a substantial reason for delaying anything. If you have a quorum, you have a quorum.
I'm not talking about delaying anything. I'm talking about a retreat where the whole board is there talking about goal setting and which goals we want to go for, not doing it right now.
Oh, and I'm not suggesting that we do it right now either.
Okay, so there is an amendment on the floor to have the discussion that Mr. Poi is looking for, and it's been seconded to discuss that at the board retreat. And then if that passes, then we will approve the amendment to have the discussion. So,
I don't get to vote. I just have a question. I don't understand how that's different than what Amy recommended.
I don't think it is. I think she was just agreeing that we would have this at the retreat.
Okay. I just thought maybe I was
Is that
missing
true,
something.
Ms. Ann?
That's what I said.
Okay. So we will have a roll call to amend Mr. Poi's.
Okay. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the motion will read, it is recommended to the members of the Monroe Township Board of Education to present at the next board retreat a timetable and a plan to address knowledge about the specific metrics contained within the most recent taxpayer guide to educational spending.
But the motion to, the amendment is to have it, is that motion, but the amendment is to have it at the retreat and not do it tonight. So we have to
Yes.
approve the retreat part, and then we have to approve the motion.
Okay.
Okay? So this is just to have the discussion at the retreat.
Okay.
Does everybody understand that? Okay,
Okay.
roll call.
Ms. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Poi?
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso?
Yes.
Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz?
Yes.
Madam Board President, the motion's unanimous to have it at the retreat.
Okay, now we have to approve the original motion with the retreat in it to have this discussion at the retreat. A discussion in regard to the pupils, per pupil spending.
Ms. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Masters? Mr. Poi?
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso? Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz?
Yes.
Madam Board President, motion unanimously passes.
Thank you. Okay, are we still on number 14? Is there any other Board of Education business?
You want to set the retreat date?
Oh, that would be a great idea. We would have this in August, outside of the regular board meeting.
Correct.
So,
When are you back?
whenever I need to be. I'll be back by the 21st, which is the board meeting, so anytime after that. Okay. I'm not coming back until, so we could do this or anytime this week. Or would you be interested in doing this on a Saturday like we did in last year? Or do you want to do this in an evening?
August 24th?
Yeah.
Works for me.
Saturday, August 24th
Of what?
morning?
August.
Yes.
Saturday.
Yes.
Retreat. It's like an agenda, stuff is on the agenda, that's what we'll talk about, the main goals of how we,
We'll have an agenda. The agenda probably will, it would be like a special Board of Education meeting just to have a retreat to discuss this topic.
topics of our goals.
It would be a goal-setting meeting.
Curriculum and raising scores would be in there too, correct?
No, it would be a goal-setting meeting, and whatever you would want to bring up as a discussion, then the board would decide maybe the 2 or 3 goals that they would want to have for next year. We already have an ongoing goal that will be a multi-year goal, so that would stay. I think we have two that we've already approved and we could eliminate this year, and then we would add to that.
And we would also need to follow up on the strategic plan with school boards as well.
So it would be a goal-setting goal, and one of the topics you would talk under goal-setting would be to have the per-pupil spending. Is Saturday, August 24th good with everybody?
Work for you?
9 o'clock?
Okay.
9 o'clock? Yeah, AM.
August 5th?
August 24th.
Need a motion to do that.
And then we would need a motion to accept August 24th, 9 o'clock AM, to have a goal-setting meeting, goal-setting retreat.
Second.
I didn't make the motion.
You did.
Oh, he made the, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Mr. Braverman. Mr. Braverman, and then Ms. Antelis.
Got it.
Roll call?
Ms. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Masters? Mr. Poi?
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso? Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Paul-Panowicz?
Yes.
Madam Board President, motion passes to conduct a special Board of Education meeting August 24th at 9 a.m.
We'll call it a special Board of Education retreat.
Retreat. And that will be at the Monroe Township
It would
High
be
School.
here.
Yes.
Okay, does that work?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is there any other Board of Education, Ms. Antelis?
I actually just happened to catch the last board meeting, and I noticed there was a discussion about S2307. I was wondering if we've heard anything.
No, I reached out to Senator Greenstein this week. There is no current update for S2307 or the assembly version of the same at this time.
Well, I would like to thank Dr. Hamilton, you and Jill DeMaio. You spoke eloquently. It was nice to see the turnout. I do understand that when it goes to the Senate floor, there will be no testimony, but when it goes to the Assembly, there will be. And I hope we use a little bit more common sense about our speakers next time. And that's all I'll say.
Any other Board of Education business? Mr. Masters?
Not to bring this up, the early K, the 37, how much is that, Mike, roughly? Per, it's like 4 or something?
How much is
Early
it?
tuition for early K.
400?
$400 a month.
Per child.
And do they have to tell us ahead of time their Mecca, how many days? So do we know, can we project out?
Yes, and put down deposit.
Okay.
So the numbers I presented before are substantiated with a significant deposit.
Do we know the average for the Mecca? How much per? You know what, email me that later.
Well, it's kind of hard to tell because you have some are 2 days and some are 5 days, so I'm not sure that how you would get an average, but well, we could send you the updated information. Any other Board of Education business? Mr. Poi?
Sorry, it seems to be my night, but I did work on another report that I've just had circulate around the table. I decided not to email this to you, but to give you a hard copy. It concerns the performance reports that the Department of Education developed this year, which allows us to look at various metrics or statistics in terms of Monroe. Something new this year was that they created this peer group for each school in the district, not on a district basis, but for each individual school. And I was astounded when I saw the peer group that Monroe High School was in, because it's a rather prestigious group of high schools. We are one of the, I think there's only two districts in our peer group which are ranked rather low socioeconomically. But in terms of the performance and the peer group, we're in the category with Milburn, and I believe it's, what's that other very good district that's up that way? But there's several. You can look it up on the website. So it aroused my curiosity. I started doing some digging, and I started looking at the high schools in Middlesex County, which I felt would be a bit fairer. And I was comparing the performance of Monroe High School to other large high schools in Middlesex County. I also decided that it would possibly be informative to compare Monroe High School to other high schools that are in our same socioeconomic category, that DFG that we're in. And so essentially, I prepared a report. I'm sharing it with you tonight. I would appreciate it. I hope that you will take some time to look at it. It looks rather lengthy, and that's because it's essentially the same group of schools, but they are rank ordered according to each category. And there is a summary, I believe, on the second page, which shows, for example, that in the county, we, in terms of I think there's 13 high schools altogether in the county, we did not do very well on the HSPA Language Arts or the HSPA Math. We did not do very well on our SAT participation. We did not do very well on our AP scores that were 3, 4, or 5, or we did not do well on further education. Now, that's simply on a comparative basis, okay? So you have to actually look at these statistics that are here, because in some cases it is just a matter of a few points one way or the other. In terms of the state, we're kind of in the middle. In terms of our peer group, it's disastrous, because as I said, somehow or other, we got put into a peer group that, in my opinion, is nothing like Monroe in terms of what I know about those communities. But it's all here. I just hope that you'll take a look at this, and possibly this is something else that we could include in that retreat in terms of what can we do to improve the academic performance of the students here in Monroe. That's the entire intention. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, at this time, we will go to closed session resolution. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Township of Monroe hereby moves to go into closed session in accordance with Sunshine Law, Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975 NJSA 10:4-6 through 10:4-21 to discuss the following subjects: personnel, legal matters, student matters, harassment, intimidation, and bullying incidents 44 and 45. The discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public at such time as the matters have been resolved. Motion and a second to go into closed session?
Second.
Who was the first? Mr. Braverman, second by Mr. Masters. All in favor? Opposed?
This is the new language for the closed session item regarding illegal.
Oh, okay. Should I read that?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just going to the legal matter, explain the legal matter is to receive attorney advice in the matter of the tenure hearing of Anne Marie George, School District of the Township of Monroe, Middlesex County, Agency Docket 126-6-1/13. Okay, we still have the motion a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? And we will be going into closed session, and my guess it would be 20 minutes? 15, 20 minutes. At this time, the board will reconvene into public session and go to the number 16 on the agenda, public forum. Anyone wishing to speak, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Michelle Arminio, 9 Nathaniel Street. First, I'd like to ask about the deliberation on the superintendent's salary. First, what was the salary increase compared to last year?
It was a 1% increase.
1% increase? Okay. When was the discussion held?
In closed session, June.
Okay, so the discussion, but was there any deliberation in public about the superintendent's salary?
No, it is a closed session item.
Okay, that's incorrect. Once you decide on a closed session item, and it's been decided, there is the public, the whole point of the Open Public Meetings Act is to have the public be present on all deliberations. You could have had the discussion and decided on it, but there was absolutely no deliberation in public. That's a disgrace, because taxpayers are paying the increase, and deliberation after it's settled can be discussed in public, and it was not done. So I am really burdened by the fact that all of the board members did not open the discussion about the superintendent's salary in a public forum. Secondly, I want to thank Mr. Poi and Mr. Prezioso for their concerns about improving the academic standards in Monroe. And I'd like to understand why. It seems to me that there's a little bit of, Mr. Poi was shut down when other members could quickly criticize the situation. There seems to be a little bit of an imbalance about how you allow people, when the deliberation time comes, to do it. And I also, as a matter of protocol, there was a resolution on the table. I can't imagine how you can table something that the resolution wasn't even decided on. I mean, so somebody needs to check the Roberts rules, because there was a resolution on the table, and it should have been voted in up or down before anyone was able to table it. And I think it's a disgrace to table something immediately when you're in the middle of deliberations. I mean, and Kathy Kompanowicz, I am sorry to say I feel that you were biased during that discussion towards the people who you favored in the discussion. So I would hope that as the president of the board, that you would properly control the discussion and have respect for all board members. I think it's an essential thing. And Ms. Antilles, you were so concerned about having a plan to go forward, but when Mecca was before us, you weren't worried about a plan. You didn't care that there was no plan. It seems very hypocritical that what Mr. Poi is asking is not anything that's going to cost us money. But Mecca has $300,000. You weren't worried about putting a plan together.
Thank you for your
Inconsistent.
comments. And Mr. Poi, if you feel that I shut you down today, then I apologize, because I feel like I have given
You need to apologize to the public, because if you shut people down who have legitimate... Yes, ma'am.
Please sit down.
I would like you to understand that the public has a right to hear proper deliberations, and someone is asking to improve the quality
your time is up.
Of education, and I appreciate that.
And I believe I gave everybody the right to speak, and I did not tell anybody that they were cut off, and I'm sorry. I did, I will. Anyone else from the public? Did I do that?
Yes, you did.
Well, I'm sorry you feel that way.
There's
And I will look at that.
There's order that needs to be maintained at the meeting. We talked about this.
Hi, Steve Ryback, 23 Riviera Drive. Mr. Poi, I really want to just follow up with complimenting you again with your zeal for quality education and your sensitivity to the taxpayer situation in Monroe. We need more of this. We need all of you to get on board with him and support everything he said. It's important. It's your responsibility to do so. Just one other item. When you talked about Florida, it brought something to mind, because I came before you before talking about the problem we have with basically uncontrolled residential growth, not only in Monroe but in other areas in Jersey, and the subsequent result of increased taxes because of more kids coming into the schools. Florida has impact fees. They're legal there. New Jersey doesn't. I think New York doesn't either. They're illegal there. They're illegal. I'm sorry. In New Jersey and New York, I think we need to work not just with our state representatives, but with other school boards in putting the pressure on our state representatives to reverse some of the laws that I think the Builders Association has through lobbying achieved, because they're really having a negative impact on taxpayers and school boards. You have no control over developments that are receiving approval, but I think that we need to have more of a say so that things become a lot fairer. Thank you.
Good evening, Tom Notstein, 15 Nathaniel Street. Just a question, several Finance Committee meetings ago, it was mentioned that you were going to possibly do something with regards to the Jamesburg lawsuit. I'm just wondering where that stands.
Mr. Gorski, would you like to respond?
Yes. Basing this on a conversation that we had, which constitutes legal advice, but I'll give you the parameters that we're happy to share with the public. We're in a deposition and interrogatory stage, which is where all the documents and questions that are going to be raised in the challenge are accumulated by both parties. And Monroe is working with our counselor to accumulate the documents that we've been asked to do. And Jamesburg was asked to do this first, and I understand has submitted documents, but they are not complete at this time, and is being asked to provide additional information. That'll probably extend into August.
I kind of had the impression at the last couple of finance committees or the meetings prior to the last one that there may be some talk in closed session, or are you still going ahead with this lawsuit? I guess that's the bottom line here. It seemed like there was some intimation that that may not be the case.
Yes, everything is filed with the commissioner and still on schedule.
And did we have the legal advice in closed session like you discussed?
We did receive legal advice on that matter, yes.
Okay, you did. Okay, great. Also, tonight it was mentioned that it was discussed at the last Finance Committee meeting about Mecca. My agenda, which is right here, it's not on the agenda. And correct me if I'm wrong, but when Mr. Prezioso brought it up, it was mentioned that, oh, there's no need to discuss this because we're so much in the black. And I'm just kind of got the wrong impression tonight when you brought up the numbers.
Mr. Prezioso's comments were critical of the recommendation to the Board of Education to make a $40,000 transfer from the general fund to the Mecca Proprietary Fund. There is no requirement to discuss that at the committee level prior to coming to address it and recommend it to the Board of Education. However, previously at a public meeting, we did mention that there was going to be probably another additional need for a transfer to cover costs next month. And that would have been that $40,000 one. So there was notice provided. It was not discussed at Finance. It was not placed on the agenda. And it was subsequently passed by the Board of Education to transfer the funds.
Actually, that you're getting ahead of me because that's actually wasn't really the question. The question was tonight you mentioned the Mecca update, basically gave a student update, and you said it was discussed at the Finance Committee because it was given during Mrs. Antelis's committee report. I'm here to say it was not on the Finance Committee agenda, the Mecca update, and it was my understanding that the board has requested that at Finance Committee meetings there be a Mecca update, and that's kind of what I'm wondering.
Yeah, I beg your pardon. It was not on the finance agenda. I believe a question was asked why there wasn't a financial update at that meeting, at which time we explained that it was in preparation and the enrollment current numbers were provided, although, as you pointed out, it was not an agenda item.
Okay, but in the future, it's my understanding that will be and should be an agenda item. Is that accurate?
That's determined by the chair of every committee, what's on the agenda, and that's their prerogative.
Okay, and where do we stand with the business plan as far as being public and putting it on the website?
An important part of the business plan that's still being deliberated upon is the repayment of the loan. And I believe at the last public meeting, it was discussed and decided upon to wait until we see the September actualized numbers and get a financial statement in September before we determine a formula for the loan repayment with the retained earnings, and then that would conclude the business plan, presumably.
Okay, thank you very much.
Robert Roach, 18 Muirfield Boulevard. I think if you go back and look at the last June's board meeting, you'll find out that Dr. Hamilton indicated that by August 1st, the Mecca plan would be finished being, quote, deliberative and would be available to the public. So there was no indication by Dr. Hamilton that it would not be public until after September 30th. So that was a statement made at the last board meeting. The other issue that I want to make is that when Mr. Poi raised the issue about looking into the various categories as to where we stand. The board was aghast. A lot of the members were aghast. Oh my gosh. And here he is making a recommendation to let's see if we can identify some areas where we can possibly save some money. Whereas when an item comes up to let's spend some money, the board, for the most part, is all for that type of thing. So I find that very hypocritical. Thank you very much.
Anyone else from the public? Seeing no one, the next schedule.
Excuse me, Madam President, if I may make a couple of comments?
Mr. Poi?
All right. Someone mentioned about residential growth, and I thought it might be worthwhile mentioning something that I just heard recently. Evidently, one of our builders, and I understand it's Southfield Estates, although I thought that one was completed, but whichever municipal board does this, or agency, they have given approval that with some of the new homes, that they will be allowed to have 2 master bedroom suites. Now, I think the intention was, by building homes of that nature, that would allow some of the young families to have grandparents present in the house. And I can see a lot of advantages to that, particularly since I'm a grandparent. But unfortunately, people are using that in a different way. And I heard one person say in particular that they were going to be selling their present home and buying one of these homes so that one of their relatives could move in, and the relatives have children as well. So we essentially will have, in these newer homes with 2 master suites, bedroom suites, it looks to me as if we will have 2 families residing in those homes, paying the taxes for one house, but getting an education for the children of 2 families. I don't think there's anything we can do about it, but I simply bring that to your attention because, you know, it could potentially have some adverse effects. And I would, based on the public comment that I've just heard, I do want to say, and I realize I'm sitting here and I'm engaged in the discussions, and it's different when you're sitting there. You know, you see things differently. But I want to say that from my perception, I did not feel that I was being shut down at any time by anyone. I do believe that we will sometimes disagree with one another, and that's the way it should be. And I do believe that there should be give and take in our discussions. And I think it's unfortunate that sometimes at board meetings, the give and take doesn't take place. And I just believe that, you know, we should have the opportunity to do that, because then we hear what other people are thinking. And sometimes in some of the committees, these topics don't come up. So I just wanted to share that because I did not perceive that I was being shut down. I do apologize that my original motion was maybe not worded as well as it could have been, and maybe even the amended motion wasn't worded as well as it could have been. But I think everybody understands what my intent is, and I think that the board essentially is looking to see how we can produce the best education possible at the best possible cost. We may go about it in different ways, but I think that we are all unified in that particular point. Thank you.
Okay, our next scheduled Public Board of Education meeting will be Wednesday, August 21st, 2013, 7:00 p.m. at the high school. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. Kaufman? Second. Second by Ms. Antalis. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? And the meeting has been adjourned.